let's give Jameson another round of applause. I really appreciate him coming out and sharing because, he's not like, a lot of times there's consultants that do innovation at, these large companies and they haven't actually built anything and they're talking about it. So when Jameson actually shares these things, it's because he's actually done it. And not only has he done it, he's going to go back and do it again, in Taiwan. And so there's this famous saying about how entrepreneurship is a lot like chewing glass. And it gets more grisly because you start liking the taste of your own blood. And Jameson, having done it, is now doing it again. I think he's starting to like the taste of his own blood. And by the way, if you have a hard time thinking about something crazy to do, just sign up for the workout. Working out with him is something that's super crazy. So I appreciate it, Jameson, for all the words that you were able to share. I also didn't know that my personal shower habits were going to be part of that. So let me finish us off because we have a great dinner back there, and Kai is back there. He knows how crazy, like the two of them are like, if you want to talk crazy, like, and how much they're lifting and how much they're putting their body through, chat with them over dinner. We do have dinner planned right after this. So let me close this out. There's the reason we wanted to put this section in here. There's been a lot of questions about AI and this current wave, and I want to answer two broad questions that a lot of founders have to sort of try to accumulate how to think about this current wave. And the one is, given this new AI platform, where should I be building? And then the second is, how do I take advantage of it? How to think about it? So I think I wanted to first start off by talking about how we don't even know if it is a platform, right? So in every technology wave, there's different levels of innovation. And so I want to break it out a little bit because that'll help with actually imagining where you're building. So obviously the application layers, where it's user-facing, whether it's customers or consumers or enterprise, that's something that's obvious. But underneath the application layer, there is the core platform because you're building on something, right? So for example, like ChatGPT or Cloud or Pi or Poe, any one of these AI applications, they're built on a platform. So for example, ChatGPT would be the application, GPT-4, the large language model will be the core platform. But then even beyond that, underneath, there's the underlying infrastructure that allows, those are the sort of like the nuts and bolts that these companies are pulling together to be able to form that core platform that allows developers to create apps. And so that would be, for example, both on the hardware side, like GPUs, that's a big throttling limiting factor right now. Or even, it's not just chips and GPUs on the hardware side, it's also software, right? Like CUDA and also transformer architecture. There's a lot going on underneath that we're starting to see that formed this current generation of AI platform. And then the other thing that a lot of founders don't think about is this. It's also are we able to do it manually? Should we maybe do it this way? Oh, yeah, so there's the tools layer. In addition to sort of the underlying infrastructure in the core platform and applications, there's just tools surrounding every layer, and it could be between layers, could be within the layer itself. And then finally, it's the ecosystem enablers around that. I find that in Taiwan, builders generally are focused on this, right? They're thinking about like, what's the end user application? And Taiwan tends to be really prolific at that, and they tend to be really good at the underlying infrastructure. So all the supply chain advantages and the foundries and the R&D that's here. One of the things I wanted to just get people to be thinking about is like, what are the tools that are making this possible? now that we have a new infrastructure, like, for example, when the internet just came on, what are some of the tools that allowed people to buy stuff, right? Like, just because it's a tool does not mean it's not as valuable a company. Stripe is one of the most valuable private companies on the face of the planet right now, and it was just basically a tool that allowed you to be able to process credit cards. So there's a lot of good examples around this, and so the reason why it's important is that on the application side, you're like going for broke, right? Either your application hits or it doesn't. But on the underlying infrastructure, core platform, and the tools, it's almost like a way to index that trend, right? Like, so if you're building, some sort of, I don't know, like there's a lot of hallucinations, right, with these large language models. If you're building a way to keep your language model, within some guardrails, there's probably going to be a lot of different applications that you build on top of that. So that could be useful for anyone that's building this whole stack. So it's a way to think about how to index that trend, just like Stripe was a way to index the trend. Coinbase was, like some of the Web3 companies doing, both CeFi and DeFi were ways to index the Web3 trend. And then there's the ecosystem enablers, and those are folks like Andreessen and 500 and others that are trying to enable builders to build more easily. So that's sort of what's going on when there's a wave. But I wanted to show you something else that's happening too, which is there's the startup side, right? When there's a wave that happens, there's a lot more startups that are building stuff in here. But another measure of the intensity of that wave is the incumbent side, right? Sometimes waves come and incumbents don't build anything. What's a good example of that? Well, Web3. Web3 was 100% owned by startups. And incumbents, Meta tried but failed, but incumbents didn't do anything there. This is very different than what we're seeing on the AI side. And then even another way to cut that is not only just startups and incumbents, but on the software layer, and then on the hardware side as well. So what you see there is a really interesting matrix of where people are building. Yeah, there it goes. And you get to sort of see like the intensity of the opportunity that's being created. And there's so many things that are going on. What I like to see, just as an indication of how big these waves are, and speaking of which, Anthony has a nice tan there because he's a surfer. And I think I like the analogy because, surfers are always looking at the swell and where the waves are and all that stuff. And that's builders, like startup founders, are always looking at opportunities to build it. But every once in a while, there's a typhoon. And when that happens, surfers start paying attention. And so every once in a while with builders, there are new innovation waves. And that's when it's like, oh, well, things are starting to pay attention. Because what I'd like to see is that the new waves, like for example, in the underlying infrastructure, right? So NVIDIA launched GPUs and has a CUDA as a development platform. But in 2017, Google launched a transformer. All that hardware and software allowed for the LLMs to be created. And then these LLMs allow for these amazing applications. What I like to see is that bottom up going in reverse as well, going bi-directionally. So now that you have this amazing usage on these LLMs, that's driving innovation back down because now there's a supply shock on GPUs. So how do you actually get transformer models or the next iteration that doesn't rely on tokenization? Then now you can be more compute. Now you have LoRa and other algorithms that help you process information more easily. And so you see this bottom up and back down, right? Then you're like, oh, well, that's like a really interesting wave. But the other thing that you see is that you see startups on the software side, of course, but now you're seeing incumbents, like the biggest gorillas out there, Microsoft going against Google and Meta, and then, sort of poor Amazon. But like they're, well, actually it's not poor Amazon, probably the poorest is probably like poor Adobe. But they are actually going out after it, all of them, against sort of the startups, which is like OpenAI. Not only that, on the startup layer, you have incumbents and startups innovating on the software, the hardware side as well. So there's this crazy, a deep, intense sort of wave going on here. Servers like to call it the cleanup set, where there's a set of waves coming in, but there's the biggest one that cleans everyone out, and like everyone gets buried. We're seeing some movements towards that direction where everyone starts getting buried by some of the generative AI things that are out there. And so I would say when you think about the first question, well, where do I build? Like certainly the most obvious is on this, but think about the platform side, the underlying infrastructure, the tools, enablers, and the quadrants around where your expertise is. And then I'm going to skip through all of this. In my full talk, I go through how each one of those go through the whole different ways of mobile, cloud, Web 1, Web 2, desktop, laptop, etc. But I just wanted to end with this, which is, how do you think about incorporating this into your own startup, right? This is what I call the intelligence market curve. So if the x-axis is the level of quality or level of intelligence, and the y-axis is, let's start with this, right? So say, for example, here is like a newborn baby, right? Like zero intelligence, or just forming intelligence, and maybe like this is Einstein. And so this is like human level intelligence. In reality, like super intelligence is going to be way out there, and that's why I sort of put this notch here. But this will be subhuman, and that'll be superhuman intelligence. And then on the y-axis, you have, y-axis, you have like sort of how easy is it to find product market fit. And so here, you basically have a curve that starts where this is a threshold, it's a cutoff, which is the product market fit threshold, where if it's less intelligent, it's a higher bar to product market fit. But as we get to human level intelligence and as we get to super intelligence, you see that threshold coming down. And that's a really interesting dynamic that you see there, because you could say, well, there are different, it shows different parts of the, I'm just going to do this manually, sorry. It doesn't work manually either. Okay. Oh, well, there's a market A where it's like subhuman, and then human level, and then market B and market C, which is higher level. So an example is like, okay, for you all, which is, what are the pieces of intelligence that you need to build your product, right? You don't need to be building an AI company, but you're building something, but hopefully you're thinking about how to utilize and enable you to be able to do things faster and easier, cheaper with AI. So for example, a good example is writing code. Writing code probably was subhuman level intelligence, with Copilot, but with GPT-4, it probably got to somewhere here, right? It's not yet the 10x engineer, but maybe GPT-5 or, further on, like with I would say like with most of the developers we talk about, like 40% of code right now in that developers are talking about are developed by Copilot. People are saying it's saving probably 30% of productivity and helping with debugging. So yeah, it's not yet at sort of like the 10x engineer level, but at some point it will be. And then maybe like even when it gets to superhuman, it's not even human interpretable, right? It's just going to be, it's maybe not a human coding language. It's going to be a machine talking to a machine, and then we just understand like sort of what the output is. So that's one of the things that you could be thinking about, like how do I incorporate this? That's the obvious one. Marketing copy is another one where like with Jasper and some of the other LLMs, you're able to get to human level intelligence, mediocre, like median human, like anything that you want to draft, emails, etc. And then what's an example of something that's sort of superhuman, right? There are gaming examples like chess and Go and poker and diplomacy and others that are either at human level or way beyond human level, but like, self-driving is probably something that will have no product market fit if it's human level, right? It'll still get in accidents, and even though it gets in fewer accidents, it will still never find product market fit until it can show that it's actually better than human and much better than human before it starts seeing product market fit. So that, it's sort of a way to just break down where the trends are and what direction it is. And you could basically go through your company and say, hey, these are all the tasks, here are all the functions that we need, and here's where it maps. And hey, like, for you as the end user, product market fit, like where do we start seeing an ability to get sort of artificial intelligence or this free intelligence that's available and start implementing that into my workflow? So I think that's a quick summary of this. I know there's a lot more I can get into in examples, but I just want to introduce that matrix to you all because, again, if you're not building and utilizing some of these tools, this is the cleanup set, right? Like everyone gets wiped out by this. So it's an opportunity for the people that are paddling and working really hard to get over the wave so you can take advantage of the set coming next. So appreciate it, and thank you very much. We're around for questions. Anything closing remarks?
Any last minute questions before we move to closing? Oh, one question.
Are we doing questions or?
We can take maybe like one or two.
One or two?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Gigi from Prism EV. So like my question was that if we go through the superhuman level, and then the product market fit would be really difficult. And if that's the case, is it good to have your business that way, or is it like easier if you shift it more toward the human level and get a better product market fit?
Oh, I didn't mean to suggest that if it's superhuman, it's going to have a hard time, because look, this is superhuman, and it's got here if there's like everything above this curve, there's a huge market for that's superhuman. What I wanted to show was that just because it's superhuman does not mean that there's stuff that are sitting under this curve that will never get to market. So self-driving is an example of that. I'll tell you another one, which is U.S. healthcare, right? U.S. healthcare diagnostics. You can be, we've had for 60 years ways to diagnose like epidemiology and disease spread that has been better than doctors have. But it's never, so there are forces that are pushing it down, so you just have to be aware of that. And on the reverse, there are forces that are pushing it up, right? So like, for example, healthcare in maybe lesser developed countries that aren't able to have as sophisticated or complex healthcare system that the US has, you're gonna start seeing those be pushed up in those countries. Another example is education. Education in the US, it's even if you get to superhuman level of tutoring and teaching, the education system in the US is going to push that below the curve. It will never get to market. But maybe in some other countries, it doesn't have to be superhuman. It could be human level, and it'll push it up to get to market. So hopefully that clears up. It's superhuman. There's a lot of space, but you have to be careful where in your building.
Thank you.
Any last minute questions? If we're good, then thank you so much, Tony.
There's one.
Oh, there's one. Sorry, missed it.
Hi, thank you. Okay, hi. Thank you, Tony. I'm Howie, founder of Protocol. So my question is that do you have any concern about any of your portfolios that using some AI tool built by some other startups and touch their core product or their core technology?
Do we have concerns about startups using other startup tools?
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Not just startup tool, just some AI technology built by any other companies can be built by can be OpenAI or any other, but just other companies but touch their core product or their core technology.
There's a lot of concern over building your company on someone else's platform. If that's where that's going, there's a lot of good examples of where this has gone badly. So Meta, Facebook tried to be a platform, and a lot of companies, Zynga was one of them, and a lot of gaming companies started casual gaming built onto the Facebook platform, and they all got wiped out. So I would say, yeah, there is some concern, but you have to think about, like, are you dependent on their platform, or are you using them as a tool for distribution, to go to market, to build? Because not all technologies are built the same, right? So if you think about those layers I was talking about, underlying infrastructure, core platform. I think if you're dependent on another company as the core platform, that is one area of concern. But there's a lot of ways that plays out, right? So if in OpenAI, for example, I don't have a concern right now. I do have concern if, for example, I'd rather have multiple brilliant large language models out there, including in the open source. But if we start, my bigger concern is, like, if it can become centralized, and it's all the customers are owned by one or two, large incumbents. That's where I do get concerned.
Thank you, Tony. And once again, let's give a round of applause to all our speakers today. Christine, Avery,